Hello and welcome back to Fallout 4, everybody. Today we're going to be taking a look at all the legendary effects that go on armor. A few days ago we looked at all the legendary effects that go on weapons, so let's talk about the different armors. And we're just going to go right down in alphabetical order. As you can see, we got our tier list here, and this is top tier, great, take it or leave it, or the better than nothing tier. Pretty much all of the effects in Fallout 4 are better than just the regular armor, so it's always going to be a bonus to have legendary armor over non-legendary equipment, but there are some that are much better than others. So first up we have Acrobat, and Acrobat can go on legs. It's only on legs, and Acrobat makes it so you reduce the fall damage taken by 50%. This is additive if you have both leg armors with Acrobat, where it will prevent 100% of the fall damage. This one sounds pretty good because there are plenty of times where you could fall off of a very tall building and die. That is something that can happen in Fallout 4. There are quite a few really tall buildings. It's not a very common situation though. And taking 50% reduced damage from any fall likely won't matter that much. You're generally not falling off of tall things super often in Fallout 4. So Acrobat may not come in handy there. If you stack it, then you can jump off of anything, which is kind of nice. Main problem with this is if you plan on using power armor, this one's pretty much useless because power armor can jump off of any building and not get hurt. So in that regard, you always have Acrobat available if you're not using power armor whatsoever. This one I would say is better than nothing, but it's not one of the ones I would really go for over some other options just because I don't find myself falling off of buildings super often to where I would need to take reduced damage. Sometimes it can happen, but usually you can kind of sort of parkour your way down, Skyrim your way down off of a building a lot of the time, and you'll be fine. So Acrobat I find just to be kind of unnecessary, but it's not a bad option. Next up we have Assassin. Assassin reduces damage taken from humans by 15%. And Assassin's pretty good. I'm going to put Assassin up into great. 15% reduced damage towards probably the most common enemy type is pretty nice. Especially if you want to stack this up because all of these are additive as well. So if you have a bunch of this on there, humans aren't doing very much damage to you. And you're most likely going to be fighting humans out of just about everything, so Assassin is a pretty good option. Then we have Adam's Bulwark. This is only on Adam's Bulwark, so it's only on one piece of equipment, which can be found in Far Harbor, and this one increases your damage resist and your energy resist based on the amount of rads that you have. So the more rads you have, the more damage resist you'll get overall. This isn't way great, especially since it's only on one piece of armor. I guess I'd put it in better than nothing, but increasing your rads is going to reduce your total amount of health, and that might not really matter to upgrade your defense. This will potentially help if you're fighting a lot of the children of Adam, or if you're fighting in highly irradiated areas and you don't have things like power armor to basically negate it, or perks like rad tolerance to just get rid of the rads, or at least reduce the amount of rads that you're taking. If you're going for a Children of Adam build, I could see it being useful because it would fit the theme really well, but for a regular build, probably not. Next up we have Auto Stim. This is in the Far Harbor DLC as well. You just need to have that DLC and then you can get this on any chest piece. And this one makes it so you automatically use stim packs once you hit 25% health or less. This can happen every 60 seconds. Auto Stim is actually pretty decent. I do like Auto Stim, especially in the early game. Later game it's not as necessary because I'm usually not falling to low health, but it can be really nice, especially if you're not paying attention to your health, or you're playing with some mods that make enemies really strong. Then Auto Stim's actually a pretty solid option. So I would say Auto Stim is probably one of the better options, and I think I'd put it up into top tier. It might just be in great, since it can only go on chest pieces, but it can go on any chest piece, so if you end up getting something like one of the Nuka World armors that has Auto Stim on it, it's going to be pretty nice. So I think I'd probably put it up there. And then we have Bolstering. Bolstering grants increased energy and damage resistance the lower your health gets. This is up to plus 35 at the lowest. Bolstering sounds decent, and it kind of is in the very early game, because if you do find multiple bolstering pieces, then you can potentially just tank through quite a lot of damage. And that's actually pretty nice. It's still not going to be very useful in the later game where enemies are either dealing really high damage or where you have really high damage resistance / health that you can kind of just tank through it. So I'd probably put Bolstering in the take it or leave it tier. It's not really one of the best, but it can be okay. Chameleon makes it so you're harder to detect by enemies. This can go on chest, legs, and arms, so you can have multiple pieces of this if you want to be sneaking around. And Chameleon for a stealth build is actually pretty good. This one's going to be less useful if you just like running and gunning, because you're probably not going to be sneaking a whole lot. But if you're going with a sneak build, I'd probably put Chameleon into great. It's pretty good overall. Then we got Cavalier. Cavalier reduces the damage taken whenever you're blocking or sprinting by 15%. This is from all sources, and this one's actually quite good on a melee or an unarmed build, because a lot of the time you will either be sprinting or blocking, so Cavalier can trigger multiple times in that regard. And I would probably put this one up into great. I think Cavalier is really good. Even if you're not doing this and you're just using a regular gun build, you're still probably going to be running at some point and something's going to try to shoot at you or hit you, and this will reduce the damage at least by a little bit, so that's pretty nice. Then we have Fortifying / Champion. This is the same effect, it just depends on which type of armor it goes on as to which of these names it has. But either way, this one gives you +1 strength and +1 endurance. That's pretty good. +1 strength means that you can carry around more stuff and you can hit harder with melee, and +1 endurance means that you're tankier. So that's really good. Fortifying and Champion is usually what I look for in the early game, and I'd put it up into great. It is very nice to have on pretty much anything. Cloaking is also in Far Harbor. This is only on chest pieces, and this is upon being hit with melee, then it releases a stealth field once per 60 seconds. So you can potentially run away and hide whenever you get hit with Cloaking. That can actually be pretty good, especially if you get it early on enough where enemies can hit you pretty hard. This can make it so you can reposition and heal yourself. So Cloaking's actually pretty great. I would put it up here. It does fall off later on, especially against regular human enemies, because most of the time they're going to be using guns. Same thing goes with like super mutants, but it can be useful for like ghouls and other animals and stuff. So enemies that are specifically made for melee, this one can be pretty nice. Cryogenic makes it so if you get hit with melee, then there's a 10% chance that you can freeze that enemy that hit you. This can trigger once every 20 seconds, so it can pop up pretty often. Again, this is only for melee enemies. Freezing them does make it pretty easy to beat them down afterwards. But being limited to just melee and not being as useful as like getting in an extra sneak crit, I don't think Cryogenic is as good. So I would say this is take it or leave it. Can be really fun if you get it in the early game though. Cunning is +1 and agility +1 perception. This is pretty good too. I'd probably also put this up into great, specifically if you're running like a melee or an unarmed build or you're using a Vats build. That's where this one's going to be the most useful, because agility dictates how many action points you have, how quickly they regenerate, so that's pretty nice. Perception also dictates, at least for guns, how likely you are to hit in Vats. And it's better than nothing, so I'd probably put it up here. Then we got another unique piece. This is Dima, and you get this from Dima in Far Harbor, and this is on Arcadia's shield. That's the only thing that this is on. This gives you +1 agility, +1 endurance, and +1 intelligence. Those are all pretty good. That's a nice amount of pluses. Plus, this is synth armor, so it is generally stronger than most armors, not counting the Nuka World armors. So Dima is also pretty great, especially if you want to rush it. If you want to rush it, you could argue it's a top tier, because having +3 to your special stats is really nice, and having generally above average armor is also really good. It's just that you have to get most of the way through Far Harbor in order to get Dima's chest piece. Then we've got the diver's suit. This is also specific to just the rescue diver suit, and this one makes it so you're pretty much immune to radiation when you're in the water, as well as you can breathe underwater. That's kind of cool. This is also in Far Harbor. You do need to do a quest in order to get this, and it's kind of one of the longer quests, so I don't usually get it right away. I would say the diver's chest is probably take it or leave it. It's only on that one single piece of armor. The armor is pretty good though, so if you do want to rush it early, it's not bad. And having the ability to breathe underwater can be useful. It's just you could also get Aqua Boy or Aqua Girl as just the level 1 rank perk, and you also have the ability to breathe underwater. This one is still kind of nice for the radiation, but that's about it. Dualist makes it so there's a 10% chance to disarm a melee enemy if they hit you. This one is probably also take it or leave it. This sounds kind of good, but you do have to realize that the enemy has to have a melee weapon in order for you to disarm them. So this is most likely going to be either human or super mutants that are fighting you. And if they disarm themselves, that is good, because it makes so you get free damage upon them. But if they're using guns, then Dualist isn't really going to do much. So Exterminator reduces damage taken by Mirelurks and bugs by 15%. This one is probably also take it or leave it. I don't think this one is as good as Assassin, where humans are a lot more common and they can attack you from multiple ranges. Mirelurks can do that, and some of the bugs can still do a lot of damage to you, so this one can be useful, especially in the early game. But I don't find it to be as useful as something like Assassin. Then we got Freefall, which this one is only on the Freefall legs, which I wasn't even aware existed. But this one makes it so you prevent all fall damage. This is the same as Acrobat, so it's really not necessary. These are combat legs, so that is good. It's one of the better armors in the game, but yeah, Freefall is also in better than nothing, but I wouldn't really go out of my way to get it. Then we got Ghoul Slayer. Ghoul Slayer reduces the damage taken by ghouls by 15%. Probably also in the take it or leave it. Similar to Exterminator, ghouls aren't that scary, especially since you can just break their legs, and if you break their legs, they can't move. which makes them really easy to kill in Fallout 4. I don't know why they didn't give them any animations to crawl or anything like that, so yeah, Ghoul Slayer, I mean, it's okay. Then we got Grognak's Loincloth, which, I mean, name alone goes to top tier because that is incredible. What this one does is it increases the wearer's strength and melee damage. This is on Grognak's costume and the Wildman rags only. This one can actually be pretty good, and I will put this up into top tier, specifically if you want to rush it for a melee or an unarmed build. The main problem with the outfit, though, is that you're going to just be locked into using only it, which is kind of a pro and a con because it makes it so you don't have to worry about the rest of your outfit, really, which is good. But it does make it so you can't have as many legendary effects on your overall gear as you otherwise could, which will generally be better in the long run because you could have arms, legs, and a chest that all have different effects on them or all have stacking effects, whereas Grognak's is only going to be one effect across the whole set. So that's why I'm going to put it up into top tier, but it is really only top tier for early on until you can get a full outfit with kind of everything on it. Then we've got Hunter. Hunter is pretty much the same as these other ones like Ghoul Slayer that we talked about, where this just makes so you take 15% reduced damage from animals. So take it or leave it. Animals can deal a decent amount of damage to you. You can run into dogs and that can hurt you pretty early on. Yaoguais can do a pretty decent amount of damage. I don't know if Deathclaws count as animals in this. If so, then that's also kind of useful that you take reduced damage from them, even though Fallout 4 has the weakest version of Deathclaws out of any of the games, so maybe not as scary or as important as it could be in other games. So yeah, Hunters kind of take it or leave it. Incendiary, this is like cryogenic, but it makes it so you can light enemies on fire if they attack you with melee. This one does give you a 30% chance to trigger it, so it does happen more often than cryogenic. However, cryogenic might be more useful because if something's frozen, it can't fight back, whereas if something's on fire, it can still fight back, it's just taking damage over time. This can trigger also once every 20 seconds. So Incendiary is also like take it or leave it. It's kind of funny when things hit you and light themselves on fire, but it's just not necessarily one of the best. Then we have the Inquisitor's Cowl, which is only on the Inquisitor's Cowl. This one makes it so it raises your intelligence the more rads that you have. I guess better than nothing. I don't really like this. Having more rads to get more intelligence isn't really that useful in a lot of situations. Maybe you'll level up a little bit quicker every once in a while because you're getting more XP from it. But I don't find this one to be all that good, and the Inquisitor Cowl isn't really one of the best pieces of armor either. Our next one is kind of a unique one. This is called Little Menace, and this is only in the Creation Club, but I figured I'd include it with this. This is on the Pint-Sized Slasher Mask, and this gives you +1 strength, -1 perception. This also reduces your detection from moving, and it makes it so you move 15% faster. This one actually seems pretty good. I've never used it because I'm never going to be paying for anything for Fallout 4. I can install mods and do the same type of thing. But this one sounds pretty great. Mostly the extra movement speed. Extra movement speed is always going to be nice just to get from place to place. And this seems to be mostly focused by using melee and unarmed. So if you get up close and you can get up close faster, that's even better. Then we got Lucky. Lucky is +2 luck. Yeah, this one's probably great. It's really nice to get a bunch of luck stuff early on, so you get pluses to your luck, especially if you're going with a crit build, like a crit melee build. Lucky is really nice to have. Martyr is only on chest pieces, and this one temporarily slows down time during combat when you hit 20% health or less. This one's quite good. Martyr is actually really nice to have, because even though I don't really like the slowdown effects, at least when you know the slowdown effect triggers and you didn't do anything to cause that, that means you got hit really hard and you're probably about to die. So you can make some really important decisions very fast if Martyr triggers. So I'm going to put this one up in the top tier because it does help your decision making. It's similar to like auto stim in that way, where if you hear it go off, you know, okay, I got to get behind cover, I got to hang out here for a second and wait. Or I got to get away from the enemy because I'm clearly not winning this exchange, and I gotta come up with another plan. So Martyr can be really good for just basically giving you another chance in every sort of combat encounter. Then we have Mutant Slayer. Mutant Slayer is like Ghoul Slayer and Hunter, where you just take reduced damage from mutants. I'd put that in the take it or leave it. Mutants aren't super common, but they can hit pretty hard, and if they have like the mini nukes that they're gonna explode on you, this isn't that bad. Same with if they've got like missile launchers, it's not that bad. If they got the pipe weapons, Mutant Slayer may not matter all that much. But, I mean, taking reduced damage is always going to be nice, so it's just these aren't as common as, like, Assassin is. Then we got Nuka Girl. This one is specific to Nuka World, and this is only on the Nuka Girl rocket suit, so there's only one of those and you have to pick it up. This one grants you the ability to breathe underwater, for some odd reason, I don't know why that is, and it also gives you +1 Charisma. Okay, +1 Charisma is fine. The ability to breathe underwater is also fine. It's similar to, like, the diver suit. I'd put it in take it or leave it, but it's not really one that I would go out of my way to get. And again, if you have Aqua Boy or Aqua Girl, you can already breathe underwater. Having +1 charisma is okay because it makes so your companions might be a little bit better, but it's nothing way crazy. Then we got Poisoner. Poisoner gives you +25 poison resistance. This one is, it's one of these two. I'm going to put it into take it or leave it. Poisoner does help, especially once you're in the early to mid game, more so if you're playing on like survival difficulty, where you might just get like an infested bloatfly that does really high poison damage to you. Or you might get something like a Rad Scorpion that does really high poison damage to you, where the damage over time actually does matter. If you're playing on the regular difficulty, Poisoner probably doesn't matter that much because you can just spam healing to out-heal it. So even if you do run into a very poisonous enemy, it's not a big deal, and most enemies don't have poison. There's only a couple of them that really do, so I think I'd probably put it there. Powered increases the action point refresh rate. That one's going to go to top tier. That one's really nice. Doesn't even matter if you're using Vats. Like me, I don't really use Vats, but having Powered is still really good because it makes it so I can just keep running. And if I can just keep refreshing my action points faster than I'm losing them, that's really strong. It's even stronger if you are doing a dedicated Vats build, because you can just constantly spam Vats and you'll just be even better than you already were. So Powered is definitely one of the ones that I look out for. Then we've got Punishing. Punishing reflects 10% of melee damage back to the attacker. Take it or leave it, I think. This is kind of useful if you're doing a melee or unarmed build yourself, and that way if you're in those ranges and people are hitting you, then it does at least a little bit of damage back to them, which is nice. 10% is a huge amount of damage, because if things are doing a huge amount of damage and 10% is enough to kill them, then either they have no health or they're hitting you really hard and you're probably going to die before they do, so it's just not super useful. Then we got Rad Powered. Rad Powered is also from Far Harbor, and this one grants you additional strength the more rads that you have. This is +1 strength per 133 rads. That's a really weird amount, but this one is potentially pretty great, especially if you get it early on, because having extra strength means that you could potentially hit harder with melee, which is nice, or you could potentially carry more stuff. And in the early game, that is kind of a concern for me, where I just don't have enough carry weight. So having Rad Powered stuff is actually pretty good, because I can just pick up more garbage, and if I need to get a little bit irradiated, I can absolutely do that. That'll make it so I'm not getting weighed down, and I don't have to be discarding all of my junk that I want to carry back to whatever base I'm using. Then we got Safecracker. Safecracker just makes it so it increases the sweet spot whenever you're picking locks. This one's great, assuming that you don't really like using the lockpicking minigame, which is fine. I know not everybody's a big fan of it, and this will just make it a lot easier for you. So that's good, especially since it can stack on multiple pieces of gear. It is nothing but a bonus, but it's not something I super prioritize either. Then we've got Sentinel/Titan. These are the same, but they are just titled differently. This reduces damage when standing still and not moving by 15%. This one I would also put up here in great, because a lot of the time if you are just taking shots like sniping, you're just going to be sitting still, so it's not a big deal to get hit. You'll just take reduced damage then. And if you're in melee and unarmed and you're using like the rooted perk, then this one can be really good because it will just stack with it, so you get even more damage reduction. And there are times when you just kind of want to stand there and not move, block, and then just keep hitting an enemy. Sentinel and Titan can be pretty good. Troubleshooter. This one makes it so you take reduced damage from robots by 15%. I'd also put that in the take it or leave it. It's similar to these other Slayer ones where it's nice, it can be useful. Some enemy robots can do pretty high damage, especially if you get like an Assaultron to the early or mid game, then they're actually really scary. But into the late game, you can kind of just hang through just about anything, although that is just sort of the late game in Fallout 4 anyways. Then we have Unyielding. This is +3 to all of your stats, so long as you're at 25% health or less. This one could be useful, and having +3 to all special stats is a big deal, but you don't want to be at 25% health or less a lot of the time. I'd probably put this in the take it or leave it as well. Unyielding can be useful, but I'm not prioritizing it over other bonuses. I wouldn't prioritize it over something like Fortifying or Champion, where I just get that +1 strength and endurance right away. Where this one does have a requirement, and low health is not always a place you want to be at. And then our very last one is Vats Enhanced. This one reduces the total amount of action points cost in Vats. For a Vats build, this one's top tier. Vats Enhanced is really, really good, since you can stack multiple parts of this, since this can go on chest, legs, and arms. So you can have a lot of reduction in action points, even more so if you're using a Vats Enhanced weapon too, because that's 40% if it's a melee or an unarmed weapon. So you could stack this up a lot and do a lot of attacks in Vats, and that is really, really strong for those builds. For me personally, I don't really use Vats just because I don't find it all that useful in Fallout 4. I mean, it is useful, it's just that you can already aim really well in Fallout 4, so that's the main reason why I don't use it that much. Hi, this is Future Ron. I kind of messed up and didn't put 2 of the effects on here, so let's go over those 2 really quickly. Our first one is Sharp. Sharp is +1 Charisma, +1 Intelligence. +1 Charisma and +1 Intelligence is nice. More Intelligence means that you're going to be getting more XP. Charisma means that companions are going to be attacking more. So Sharp is also going to go up into Great. And then Sprinter. Sprinter increases your movement speed by 10%. This one usually only goes on legs, but there are plenty of hats that actually have this too. So this one is actually really good, and I'd put this one up in the top tier too. Sprinter is really nice, just so that you can get places faster, or you can get up to enemies quicker, or you can even run away from enemies quicker. So Sprinter is always a really good one. And that'll do it for all the legendary effects in Fallout 4, at least for armors. So thank you guys so very much for watching this. Tell me your thoughts on these armor bonuses down in the comments below. Where would you put them? I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.